married. This is my first time singing since I've been married. So look at the ring. Oh, if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it, and you did. Okay, so
And
I have
did.
and I have not had the phenomenal pleasure of meeting your beloved. I'm just gonna say the videos, the pictures. I mean, I felt like my dream wedding. Y'all was just amazing. Skin was looking moisturized. The head was laid. Y'all were just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you
Congratulations.
so much. And thank you for saying that. What's crazy is that, Marcus is a centimeter younger than me.
A
Um,
centimeter.
just a centimeter. And what's wild is when we went into the whole wedding planning process, I was like, okay, babe. But I realized that I didn't grow up thinking about what a wedding would look like. That wasn't even a part of my possibility index, right?
Mm.
Whereas, he's in his 30s. So he like that was part of what he had imagined. Like he had thought about like what he wanted, and he was like, I know I'm gonna get married. It's gonna be to a dude, like this kind of dude I want to marry. Like he was way more he
Well,
was
wait,
made way more prepared than I was, if I'm honest, Lurie.
so wait, listen, because I think that is so dope because he's a centimeter younger, but in the space of that centimeter, his possibilities for being able to get married
Yeah,
sound like they were completely broader than what your possibilities were. Isn't that crazy how things can change in
so
just a
crazy.
centimeter of time?
In just a little bit of time. I mean, you got to think about when I was in my teens, in my 20s, if you were a gay person, you could not give blood. If I was into my teens, in my 20s, if you were a gay person in certain states in the United States, you could not adopt a child if you were openly gay.
Mm, mm,
I mean, you got to think about like my possibility index was completely different, right?
yeah.
The civil unions were a huge point of contention. You could not serve in the military and be openly gay when I was 18, 19 years old, right?
Mm,
So the a whole thing was completely different. Like even down to the fact of like what you thought your life expectancy was as a Black gay man in this country. I grew up I was in college in the 1990s where Black male HIV rates and AIDS rates. Like we only talk about HIV now, but I lived with AIDS. I had classmates who died when I was in undergrad, right? Like,
mm,
so we had survival rates for Black gay men in this country, in these United States in the 1990s that were on par with places that did not have access to healthcare. The
right.
white guys were figuring it out, and we just
Yeah.
were dying, right? Like we were 10, 15 years behind. And so for him to have like this, it was wild to Lurie, because at one point during the planning or whatever, he was like, well, my dad is gonna do da 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 da. And I was like, your dad gonna give a toast at the wedding? And he was like, yeah. I was like, so I need to find somebody that's gonna do that too. You know what I mean? So like my father passed away, but so I asked my brother, I was like, yo, can you do this? And he was like, yeah. To me, the thought process of both of his parents, like, and these
Mm,
black folks from
right,
Detroit, you know what I
right.
mean? Um,
Melanated, richly melanated.
melanated.
Yes.
And his dad was like, yo, like you're a little long in the tooth, but like you a good dude. He was like, I support this. I love how how you are with my son, how you treat my son, etc. And he was like, he's like, I got 8 kids. He was like, welcome to the fold. Welcome to the fold, number 9. And it was like
Wow.
wild, right? Like, cause for me, I loved that. But yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. So thank
Like
you for saying.
y'all not gonna see this until the video goes up on YouTube. But if y'all can see the big old cheesy ass grin Drew got on his face, now he always smiling anyway. But if you could just see this grin, it's oozing out of your pores. I see the love. I've seen, and just even watching the interactions and how you talk about him online. It does my heart good. It does my heart really good. I love
Thank
love.
you.
So,
Me
I'm
too.
just
Me too.
glad. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Now, one thing, Drew, that I
Yeah.
don't love is dealing with the
Mm.
folks at work. And I know that's a hard
Woo!
turn. It's a hard turn. But
Woo!
we get some time now. I must say I feel a little privileged because I'm technically quote unquote the boss in my office, which
Mhm.
I put in air quotes, even though it's
Yeah.
factually true, but like I'm not comfortable claiming it. Yeah, I still, and
Right.
I have people that I answer to, but for my unit, like I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that because we are a racial justice law center, shout out to the Center for Law and Social Justice at the Mega Evans
Shout out.
College. It just so happens we tend to attract people who are more and less in alignment politically. So
Yes.
if there are conversations in our office about politics, it's very black.
It's
It's
very black, very safe
very black,
space
very
type
safe space.
territory.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But when I started out as a baby lawyer, I was recruited at a firm, multinational firm, 1,000 lawyers, big, beautiful, wonderful, big building, the whole thing. And it was a firm that was started by Jewish lawyers who were very proud of the fact that they were started in the 1920s when nobody was hiring Jewish lawyers. And so the political engagement there was much like it is for me in my office, but for them as Jewish people. And this was during the time when there was a conflict between Israel and Lebanon. And the members of the firm, the partners, brought in some experts to talk about this conflict between Israel and Lebanon, but they didn't have anybody from Lebanon's perspective. It was only the Jewish perspective. And I was like, oh, you can do that? And then my coworker was like, child, it's their shit. Like, they can do whatever they want.
That's what the hell they want to do.
They do whatever they want. But so many of us, I've seen the gamut in how we can approach talking about politics. And one of the things, you had actually put out this great video. Amina, do we have the video? I want you all to listen to this video where Drew is talking about how to talk about politics at work. And then, Drew, I want to get your response to everything I just said and then the video thereafter.
Yeah.
Election cycles and political moments have the ability to bring out the best and the worst of our colleagues. So today, I'm going to talk about politics at work so you don't have to. Here are my top rules for dealing with or not dealing with political chit-chat at the office. Number one, you have the right to remain silent and to remain in silence. You don't have to engage. First of all, you could say, hey, I have a hard, fast rule. I just don't talk about politics at work. And I hope that that's okay. Or if the conversation is going, you can say, y'all, I think I'm on deadline, so I'm gonna catch up with you later. Alternatively, one of our LinkedIn instructors, Kwame Christian, says that if you do engage, there are a couple of ways that you can do it artfully. Number one is that you learn, don't teach. You share, don't preach. And finally, you agree to disagree and respect each other's differences. Now, if you're in that conversation and it goes to a place where you are really uncomfortable, the first thing is to take a break, take a walk, take a deep breath, maybe have a conversation with your group chat or your partner. But if it goes really wrong, have a conversation with your manager so that you can in real time sort of document what was said, how you felt about it, and have that conversation about how to resolve it if resolution is needed.
See, now there you was doing God's work, Drew McCaskill. You was. Talk to us about the dangers of talking about politics in the workplace.
Lurie, I mean, listen, I think it's really, really important, especially in this current environment. So much is politicized. People are so on there. It's either black or white, right or left. And you can't necessarily always look at people and assume what is going to come out of their mouth when engaging in a political conversation. As recently as this weekend, a brother came out of the left with me at a cocktail party of, I thought, very like-minded individuals. And I said, and here's the thing about that. I have begun to think about him differently. So that's the thing that I think is really important at work. I grew up in the work environment in an era where you didn't really talk about religion at work and you didn't talk about politics at work. In polite company is what my mama used to say, right? And so I think that the dangers in that are, one, entering into a space where you are debating somebody at work about something that is very personal to you. And what I think is just a rule of thumb for me is that at work, I fight with facts and not feelings. And it's very hard to do that in political conversations, particularly when people are in disagreement about what are the facts, right? And so that is one of the reasons why I say, like, listen, if you're going to have a political conversation with somebody at work, one, first of all, is this person willing to or interested in having a conversation? We don't talk enough about consent as it relates to conversations. Now, I'm gonna put that out there, is that so many of us, particularly Black folks, women, people from underrepresented groups, get pulled into conversations about our identity without us being asked our permission first.
Yes.
Think
And it's like, I
about
don't
it.
want to talk about this with you, Susan. Like, why are we having this conversation? Like, aside from no, you cannot touch my hair. Like, I don't want to talk about this with you.
Remind me to tell you the story about how after I got a fresh fade one day, I was in the office in my job in Atlanta early on in my career, and a young woman rubbed the top of my head because I was sitting down and she was standing up, and she told me that it felt like a puppy.
Jesus.
That's for
When were her funeral services? How was the repast? How did that end?
It ended in some serious conversations with the owners of our firm, and she was crying, and I was like, you want to wait and have this conversation when you get done crying, because I still have some things left to say.
Oh, now that right there, write that down, folks. When they turn on the tears, I like that line. You said, do you want to wait and have this conversation until you can stop crying? That's a power statement right there, because usually the tears will disrupt the ability to have any meaningful substantive discussion.
Not with me.
Let's wait.
Not with me. Not with me. I was raised in a household with a mother with a lethal power of the tongue, right? I'm talking about the power of life and death in the tongue, mother, is what I was raised by. So I think that's the other thing that you got to think about. And I think that if you start to think about, do I have consent to have this conversation? And does this person have my consent, right? I can remember, Lurie, that in 2008, people would pull me to the side. I was the only black senior leader at a consulting firm. And almost all of my clients were in highly regulated industries, financial services, as well as healthcare. And almost all of my clients, I was probably at that job for 5 years before I had a black client. The client that was who was the person in charge, who wrote the check or signed off on the check, was a black person. And people would pull me to the side and come out the Obama closet on me.
Ooh,
and they would be like, I just want you to know, Drew, that I voted for
Obama. Wait, would they whisper it like that with a smile?
Absolutely whisper. And I would be like, what am I supposed to do with that, right? And that wasn't even a situation where I felt weird about it, where I did too, but I didn't want to talk about necessarily politics or my politics or voting for Obama. Like, I'm extremely proud of the fact that I voted for Barack Obama. Like, I got videos about it. I drove the bus for McCaskill United Methodist Church to pick up people and drive them to the polls. Like, I did all of that in 2008, right? But so consent is a big deal. The other thing I would say is, like, you need to have a real understanding in your head about, have I considered the impact of this? The intention is one thing, or the impact of this. What do I gain from this conversation, right? What are the potential risks of this conversation? And I think for Black folks and women and people from the LGBTQ plus community, people from underrepresented groups in general, part of what you have to do and think about when people draw you into these conversations that are about identity is, it is perfectly okay for you to say to that person, you know what, Lurie, I am so glad that you have this curiosity about this. I wish more people did. I am just not the right person to help you with it.
Write that down. Write it down. Make it plain. Write it down. I'm not the right person. I'm so glad you are curious. I'm not the one today. You ain't got to say I'm not the one. Just, I'm not the right person.
I'm just not the right person to help you with that.
Because I'm not the one, might come out a little blackly, and I ain't the one. Like, we don't want that. It's just, I'm not the right person for this.
I'm not the right person to help you with that. Protect your peace. And also, Google is free. You know, like go and study. Ta-Nehisi Coates has some books. Like, there's a lot of options out there. Like, listen, the 1619 Project is a whole podcast. You ain't even got to read it now. You can listen to the podcast. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I feel like that's a part of it, is that we get into these situations, and oftentimes we're already in singular environments, and you don't know what to do with it when somebody hits you with that. And so what I always say to folks is that if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And so you should know. My dad used to always say, what are you going to say when somebody offers you some cocaine? What are you going to say when somebody offers you some drugs? What are you going to say when somebody offers you? And he was like, you should know what you're going to say before you get in the moment where somebody asks you. That way you're much more likely to make a better decision about what comes out of your mouth next and what you do next, right?
That's right.
And so I feel like that's the same thing for us in dealing with sensitive topics and things like that at work, is you do not have to engage. That's number one. If you choose to do it, right? Like some of us are out here warriors in these streets. And if you choose to do it, I think you need to have a couple of rules in mind. One, and I always say that when I talk about that at work, you need to fight with facts and not feelings. I think that there's a piece of that that says that you need to share, right? Share, and then you can share and leave it there, right? Like if your goal is to convince somebody, you have already stepped out of the bounds of what is going to be, what is going to be a productive conversation. That person has to have a curiosity and an openness already. And if you don't think that they have that, then protect your peace and protect your reputation. Because at the end of the day, is this conversation that you're getting ready to have, does it advance the business that pays either of you?
Come on, Drew McCaskill, 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. Does it advance? And, I think we can ask that question at the workplace. We can ask it when we are about to engage with somebody on the Facebook, when your older aunties and uncles and thems is going off. I got one, shout out to you, Baba, because I be seeing some bullshit on here. And I'm like, I have so much respect for you. But what you said earlier, Drew, you think about them differently. And I can't afford to be thinking about how you trifling and you were anti-black, you black skin, but you anti-black. I can't be thinking about that when I need you to hit the button, like so that the spaceship can go out. I can't be having them conversations. Drew, we have somebody from Texas who has a story to tell. Lisa, thank you for calling. Lisa from Texas. What would you like to say to Drew McCaskill today?
Man, I love you guys, man, like for real.
Love you back.
I was in court. I'm a defense attorney now, but I was a police officer. I talked to you a couple of years ago when the Tarrant County 4, we were running for office. So I was sitting outside the judge's chambers last week waiting to do a plea. And so these two white attorneys, one is a prosecutor, one is a defense attorney, I could just hear them in there talking about Kamala like crazy, And I said, okay, Lisa, don't say shit. Don't just keep cool. But finally, I just lost it. So I got up and I just said, y'all really hate black women this bad? And it was like, they were just stunned, like, what, you're calling us racist? I said, I never called you a racist.
Nope.
I just said, do you hate black women this bad? Because one of them said, if she gets in, this is what we're going to have to do to her. I said, what are you going to do to her? And it got crazy. And I said, I try not to interject myself into this in this courthouse, but I couldn't let it slide. And I said, how do you deal with the prosecutor? You're dealing with a person. And I said, this man has 34 felony convictions. And you say you represent the state of Texas. And you are by law and order, but you're not by law and order.
Drew. Lisa, thank you for that. That's one of them things right there. I might have needed to take a break. After that, I might have needed one of them long walks that you just described. And Lisa, shout out to you in the Tarrant County 4. Y'all were doing the thing, running for office and doing the work. We appreciate you, Drew.
Listen, I think what Lisa is saying is like there are moments where you make a decision. It's like, am I going to say after the fact, oh, I wish I had said, right? But think about this. Do you wish you had said, right? Is this person is there a curiosity, there's an openness, or sometimes does just your presence in that space stop people from talking crazy at work, right? And do you want to put your black body in front of that?
Right.
Sometimes it depends on who you are, where you are in your life. Do you need to protect your peace? There are one of the things that I talk to people offline a lot about is the fact that so many of the things that are happening in real time in the public sphere that are related to what's happening in our political dialogue right now are triggering for a lot of Black women who identify with the vice president, right? And so I wrote an article for my newsletter on LinkedIn about name pronunciation, right? And so many Black women have said to me offline, I know what it feels like to have the mispronunciation of my name weaponized against me at work or used as a microaggression against me at work. And it is triggering for me. And like they had said, hey, I like what you wrote. Like, there are certain things about this current political cycle that feels very similar to what I have dealt with in my career as a Black woman. And what I say to that is that in these times and in these spaces, it's where you have to protect your peace, right, at work. And if there is something that is happening to you that you feel like is not professional, does not live up to your company values, I think it might be time to have a conversation with your manager about that so that you don't have to go in, so that you don't have to go at that alone, right? I think that there is a beauty in what I said in that post about documenting what happens to you at work.
Right.
And having a record of it, right? And so one of the reasons why I said in that post is that if you feel like the conversation goes really, really left and you're really uncomfortable, it's really important for you to, in real time, to document what you said, what was said, any details around where your environment was, and then have a conversation potentially with your manager, right? So that, you know, I think it comes down to that thing about if you don't say something, folks will kill you and say you enjoyed it, right? And so I think that there's nothing wrong with you having contemporaneous notes about anything that you feel like is a microaggression at work. And that's just a rule of thumb in general. If you feel like someone says something to you that's misogynistic, that's homophobic, that is racist, you need to write that down, document it, even if you don't do anything with it today. And here's the other thing that I learned in another point in my life is that details matter, right? The faintest ink is way better than the sharpest memory. And so I think it's really important for you to protect yourself at all times, right? And so if you get pulled into something like that political conversation, or you get pulled into overhearing something like a political conversation, just jot it down. Even if you don't do anything with it right now, jot it down, think about it, pray about it, take that walk, whatever you need to do. But you're stronger with documentation than you are with just a feeling, right? Because the closest
them paper trails, brother. I tell you one thing, as an attorney, I selectively love and hate a paper trail. But when it comes to protecting my peace and my interests, we gonna paper this mug, right? We gonna paper it down. And I've also been in a situation, that same law firm actually. We were at a dinner, and in the summertime, in the summertime, summer associates, people don't always have good home training, Drew. And sometimes people act at the dinner like they did at home. And we had this one. He was an intern, like I was, a summer associate is what they called us, and he gets a little too drunk. Now, I don't drink at these events especially when I was a summer associate. I would get tonic water, something that looked like a drink, but you weren't gonna have me out here. My mama raised me. I was already making more money than Black Jesus, so I wasn't gonna lose this. It was too much on the line.
You wasn't gonna lose this good job, this good Black job,
not this good Black job, no sir. But he starts to talk, and he gets a little too chatty. Now, I done told you this is a firm started by Jewish people. So he starts talking about all sorts of Israel and Palestine stuff. And I'm like, now this was in the early 2000s. I'm like, what? Who trained you? We ain't doing this at the people them firm. And then Drew, he makes a comment along the lines of, and Lurie, because, pronouncing my name, going back to your name pronunciation thing, basically launches into a whole spiel about how Black people should be glad that we had slavery because we could be in, quote, fucking Africa, right? And so now I got my tonic in my hand. I'm not drunk at all. I am not at all in any influence whatsoever. I am hot coming out of this Penn State situation. I'm an Africana Studies major, itching to burn shit down. But I'm also mindful and demure. Because this is a firm event. So I politely and lovingly kicking his ass with the way that I have, some of you have seen me do before.
Yes.
And I have ripped him a new one without ever raising my voice. And then I went on about my business. I didn't do what you said to do. I didn't write it down. People knew what had happened because it was a very public situation. But I was just like, cool, ain't nobody gonna have my back. I'm gonna have mine. I'm gonna keep this good job because like I said, me and this good money, we go together right now. And did you know that it got up to the hiring partner? They called me into the office, and I was like, nah, I ain't did shit. What y'all ain't finna do is have me out here. But they called me into office because other people were so impressed with how I handled it that they raised it to the partner. And that boy did not get an offer at the end of the summer. He was summarily dismissed from the program as a result of that interaction. So sometimes on the rare ones and twos, you might have a situation like that. But had it not gone that way, I might have been very upset that I didn't document it. And so I think the ability to write these things down is so important and keep track. Now, I know you have to go in just a minute, Drew, but once I write it down, what am I doing with it? I'm certainly not just keeping it on my desktop at work, because that could be a problem. What am I doing with the information I'm writing down?
So I think that what you do with that information is that you keep your own personal records. Like, you keep your own personal records for all sorts of things, right? I think you should keep a personal record of like when something like that happens to you. And Lurie, I think that here's why I did the video in the first place is that our own data that we have at LinkedIn said about 1 in 3 Black folks, Black and Latino professionals, said that they struggle to sort of adjust their communication style based on just even generational changes in their audience at work. And about half folks said that they wish that they had more guidance on professional communication at work. That ain't just about code switching. That's about what should I react to? What should I not react to? Right. And I will say this, I did a note about conferences this past week, and the younger people at on my team lit me up because I said that you need to have a 2-drink maximum at these conferences, right? Because you don't know who all is in the room with you. And while your skills might not be on display, your judgment is on display. And so they were like, but we want to have a good time. I was like, an open bar at a work event is not your friend. Walk away from that. Walk away from it quickly. And
you
I was
don't even like half these people. You know what you trying to have a good time with them for? You half of them you wouldn't want to hang out with if you had an option. So like, why you front like that's gonna be the fun? The fun is with your girls and with your boys. That's where the fun. And you're not gender non-conforming. That's where your fun is at. Your fun is not at the open bar at the work event.
And listen, look, Afrotech is not 401k Freaknik. That is just go there to advance your career. It is not homecoming. It is none of those things. Like, and professionalism still matters. That is not, there are tons of folks who are blackity black and absolutely professional that's not acting white. It's not any of those things that people will try to reel you into in crazy rhetoric around. Professionalism really matters. And Lurie, you are an attorney, right? Trained, Africana studies, right? And so you had a skill and an ability to do the verbal assassin on that gentleman and walk away because you were clear-headed, sober, and in your gifts. If your gift is not that, then the best thing for you sometimes to do is what I said in that space is to exit from that conversation. Talk to your partner, talk to your group chat. Your group chat will save your piece many, many times. Then if it's really egregious, or if it's something that even is borderline egregious, document it. If it is really egregious, document it and have a conversation with your manager about it, because you may or may not need resolution about it. And what the best position for you to be in is the person who has it documented and who is seeking the resolution and engaging your manager to be your partner in that resolution, as opposed to being the person who it is reported to, and then they have to address it with you. That's my tip.
Drew, you be dropping the words, you be dropping the dimes, you be keeping us focused. He said, "Yo, Afrotech ain't your 401k freak." There's no such thing as a 401k freaknik. I'm just gonna let you know.
There is no such thing as 401k freaknik.
If you're trying to get the freak on, I'm gonna need you to do that in home territory. Do it. And I can't say freak on that. Can we strike that? Strike from the record, Your Honor. Permission to remove that phrase from the record. We are not doing nothing starting with freak and on or off in light of current news affairs. But
exactly.
Drew, but you see, that's exactly what I mean. When you at work, be mindful, be demure,
be mindful,
be cutesy. Don't be freaky. Don't be freaky at work.
Not freaky.